I was grinding and grinding and grinding, and I would not let myself rest. I had a few big challenges with my health. Internally, I wasn't able to operate in the same way that I used to.
There are these things in life that put the brakes on, whether you like it or not, and it really forces you to reshift your understanding and perception of yourself.
Yeah.
You're almost like a dog on a leash wanting to go and you can't. You're forced to really sit with like, who am I? How do you move through that inner conflict?
I think the biggest realization is I contradicted myself a lot. I have always known genuinely that I'm going to get there. I've got success in my blood, but my behavior didn't demonstrate that because I was so closely grappling every move that I would make.
How do you correlate that ambition with like this fictional timeline we've put in our head?
There is no timeline. If you have a big vision and you have a big knowing in your belly and you're doing the right things, then you can almost take it as it's done. There's usually two questions that you can ask yourself to identify what that looks like. The first question is...
All right, Balancers, welcome to another episode of The Balance Theory. I'm so excited to bring you today's guest. She's a woman that I connected with, I'd say maybe like 3-4 years ago. I shooted my shot on LinkedIn and was like, saw another Aussie in Dubai in the podcast space, wanted to connect with her. We kindled a friendship all those years ago,
yes.
And life has brought us back together recently. So I'm so excited to share her story and get up to speed with her life. Nicki Bedford, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. I feel like it's well overdue, but I almost feel like I'm happy it's happening now because I feel like we have a lot to get through.
We have a lot to get through, and I can't believe it's been 3 to 4 years because I remember meeting you like it was yesterday, genuinely.
I know. I think where I want to start this conversation is what is the necessary context we need about your life, about your career to understand, I guess, the things we're going to be talking about today?
Well, let me give you a little bit of a background. So I think the context that you need first and foremost is I would consider myself someone that's incredibly ambitious and has always seen the best in life. And I've always loved the journey. I've always appreciated the journey because I've loved learning, building big things, meeting people along the way. But I've also always had very big goals and a huge vision. And I've always known in the depths of my belly that I will achieve very, very big things. And I've known that from a very young age. Now, I started my career in corporate. In fact, I started it in sales. All those years ago, I was telephone sales, hammering the phones, and I went from, I guess, sales into sales leadership and then business leadership. And my most recent role was head of Asia Pacific at BuzzFeed, where I was leading a team in control of global expansion across Asia Pacific. Loved it, came to Dubai, quit my job, quit my husband of 7 years and completely started over. And I think it was the first time that I was finally living in true alignment. I started completely from scratch. And I think when I did start from scratch, sometimes you always think, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to go into the next thing and it's going to be fine because I've always been fine. It was not fine. It took me a very long time. I've been here for 3 to 4 years. And I think I even met you at the very, very beginning.
You just moved. Yeah.
Of my journey. And it was hard because I think the last 3 to 4 years I've just been figuring out who I am because I always thought I knew who I was until I realized my identity was always attached to this level of achievement that I could have within my corporate career. Then next minute I was single and unemployed with no idea what I wanted to do other than the fact that I was like, oh, I've got big dreams and big vision. So I spent the next couple of years building businesses and I had a podcast. But there was just this emptiness that I was feeling because I wasn't hitting on what I was truly passionate about. Then I finally started to build an app, which I was passionate about, but I thought, I don't have an audience for this damn app. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to build the audience first. Created a business called Founders Official, a business network for female entrepreneurs, and it just exploded. Now, the problem with that is I was burnt out almost the entire time because the 3 years prior to building Founders Official, I was grinding and grinding and grinding, and I would not let myself rest in any capacity because I was so disappointed in myself for not making progress, if that makes, even though I was making progress. It's actually hard to put into words because I remember looking at myself in the mirror and being like, you've got this. And then also thinking, but where is it? Where is the got part of it? So I guess that's where I am. And then after starting Founders Official, it took off so quickly and I had so much love for it. And I finally thought, oh my gosh, I've got it. And then I had a few big challenges with my health, and it just internally I wasn't able to operate in the same way that I used to. And I was so excited because I had all of this ambition to keep going. But on the other side, my body was like, can you please calm down? Like, absolutely not. And I was like, yes, we are. Like, it was just this internal battle. And so I had so much internal pride, but resentment for myself for not being able to figure it out or not having the energy to be able to continue to push through.
Well, thank you for sharing that part of your journey because I know it's something you've gone through recently, and I can say with full certainty that so many people listening understand that inner conflict, even myself. Now, your journey kind of spans across so many different experiences, from being in a thriving career to feeling like there's a void in your life, to starting over, to trying something and not quite sure, to then finding something you love but there's still something that's not right, and then life having to slow you down. And I was just telling you briefly, like, even though we're going through very different life events, I feel quite similarly, right? I feel like I have all this ambition, but I'm also at a stage where I've got a baby that's under 1 and I want to be so present and I want to have a slower life and be with her. But at the same time, I don't want to slow down on my dreams. And so Absolutely. I feel this inner force conflict of I can't go as fast as what I want. And I really want to speak about this, what I'm going to call like the forced slowdown.
Yeah.
Because I really don't hear a lot of people talking about it. But whether it is your health, whether it's a life event, whether it's something that happens in your family, whether it is something at work, whether you have a baby, like there are these things in life that put the brakes on, whether you like it or not, and it really forces you to reshift your understanding and perception of yourself.
Yes.
Because like you've said, our identity often is so kindled with what we do, our output, our pace. When that's removed from you, you're almost like a dog on a leash wanting to go and you can't. You're forced to really sit with like, well, who am I?
Absolutely,
right?
Yes.
So you went from going full speed to being forced to stop. With going into as much or as little detail as you like, talk to me about that moment for you and how it felt.
So I think for most of my life, I have had boundless energy. I have always loved building things, meeting new people, seizing opportunities, finding new ways of doing things. I was always called the Energizer Bunny as well, which I had a lot of pride in, and I've always been called the Energizer Bunny since I was young, and I always thought, oh, yes, like I am. I'm just so bouncy, like I'm so excited by life. And then all of a sudden, I was hit with a period of not being able to show up in that way at all. And it was so shocking because it was my whole entire identity. It was the fact that I had the energy to push through. And even when I was sad or negative things happen, I would always have this energy to push through. So when I no longer had this energy to push at all, I was so disappointed in myself. I had this internal resentment. And I also had this belief that I was letting people down and I just wasn't able to accomplish what I wanted in the time that I wanted to do it. The interesting thing is, it didn't slow any of my ambitions down. I still had the ambition, but I did go through the phase of, why me? For the love of God, like what is going on? I haven't done anything. I'm a good person. Like, I remember myself sitting in the shower. This is probably too graphic, but I was sitting in the shower and I was just letting the water hit me. It felt like one of those sad movies, just thinking this is so effed up. This is the one time that I have finally found my passion, my true passion after years of figuring it out. it's moving in the right trajectory, and then all of a sudden what? I'm just unable to move in the way that I would normally move. Oh, the internal conflict is unlike anything I've ever had in my life. And even now it's funny, I can just remember the feelings because I've always been such a big lover of life and I've always had just this energy to push through and I just didn't, basically.
How do you move through that inner conflict? How did you move through it?
Okay, so there were a lot of tantrums, internal tantrums. And it was a real conflict, first and foremost, because I still had the same ambition, but the first thing I needed to tell myself was, nothing is going wrong, Nicki. Nothing is going wrong. This is just, finally, I'm forced to listen to my body. For so long I was ignoring internal cues and I knew I was ignoring them. We're women, we are very intuitive, and I would be quiet, I'd be like, shh, like we're fine, let's just keep going. And I guess the biggest thing was just realizing that this is just a part of the story. This is a part of my journey. And if I continued to push at the rate that I was pushing previously, then I would never enjoy the process. So this has allowed me to do is I was still operating. I just was operating at a less of a capacity. And so I realized that when I did slow down, things were still able to move forward. But I figured so much more out about myself. The personal development was next level.
Can we dive into that a little bit?
The personal development?
Yeah, because it's interesting when you think, you said none of your ambitions, nothing actually slowed down, right? So it's not often the what, it's often the how, right? It's how we're moving through life. It's how we're showing up, and we can change that and it doesn't impact the trajectory or momentum that we've got going on. But separating that and realizing that is often a hard task because we think what we do equals output. We always we're concentrating on that, but sometimes the metric that we're focusing on is the wrong thing, and there are many other things to focus on. Don't get me wrong, I love cooking, but I am not immune to those days where you get home and you just cannot be bothered making anything. And the last thing you can think of is just wanting to whip together a boring salad or an omelette. And these are the exact type moments I needed Huel in the pantry. Now, if you haven't heard about Huel, it is a complete meal. It is not like a shake you have on top of food. Now, what I love most about the Black Edition powder is it contains protein and it has fiber in it, as well as over 27 essential vitamins and minerals with no artificial colors or sweeteners. So you know that it's actually good for you, as well as actually filling you up as well. The reason this has become an absolute staple in my pantry is because on those days where I have low energy and I cannot be bothered making a single thing, what I end up making never fills me up and it never gives me energy. Sometimes I even resort to takeaway, right? So having this in the pantry for those days where you just want something quick, literally takes under 60 seconds. I love blitzing mine with a banana, a bit of milk and serving it over ice. It's delicious, it's good for you, and it fills you up. It literally takes the guesswork out of what I need to prepare and the effort. They also have the RTD bottle, which is literally already done, grab and go if you want something even faster than making a shake. For a limited time, all of our listeners and new customers of Huel, that's HUEL, can get 15% off by visiting huel.com/balance. But just before we get back to the episode, I want to tell you guys about one more thing. If you know anything about me, it's that I've never been a multi-step skincare routine type person. When I find a product I love, I'm loyal, but I have a requirement. It needs to leave my skin feeling hydrated and for the day, not just a few minutes after I put it on. My skin has changed so much over the last few years that the products I used to use just don't work the same way today. But my current obsession is the Oak Essentials Moisture Rich Balm. It genuinely leaves my skin looking hydrated, dewy, and fresh well after I've put it on in the morning. It's one of those products you can literally just chuck in your bag because one jar does the world. Lip hydration, dry chin, overall moisture, you name it. Oak Essentials is clean and formulates to strict EU and UK standards without phthalates, sulfates, parabens, or other unnecessary additives. It's dermatologist tested for sensitive skin, and in a 1-week consumer study, 100% of participants said their skin felt instantly hydrated, deeply nourished and noticeably softer. Now that I've discovered the moisture-rich balm, I'm so excited to explore the rest of the Oak Essentials line, including the luminous body lotion, dew body butter, and the microbiome balancing deodorant. If you're not sure where to start, Oak Essentials has a skincare quiz that gives personalized recommendations based on your skin concerns. But the moisture-rich balm is Oak Essentials bestseller for a reason. And once you try it, you're going to understand why. Head to oakessentials.com and use the code BALANCE for 15% off your first order at checkout. That's 15% off your order at oakessentials.com with promo code BALANCE. After you purchase, they're going to ask about where you heard about them. Please support the show and let them know that we sent you. Thank you so much, Oak Essentials, for sponsoring today's show. Now let's get back into today's episode. So I'd love to hear for you, what were the personal realizations you had about the way you had been moving through life?
So after I moved past the woe is me part of...
Which is necessary. You need to go through
it probably lasted longer than usual. After I moved through that part, I thought, okay, Nicki, let's get down to business. What do we actually need to do? And I think the biggest realization is I don't like letting people down. And because a lot of what I was doing at the time was centered around events, we were doing a lot of events and they exhausted me a lot. Just my body wasn't able to not keep up, but I'd have only enough energy for the event. And after that I just felt like I was losing my personality. Like I just lost all of the elements of myself that I was proud of. But it was like the deep parts of myself. Like I've always loved how much I care, about people. I've always loved that. Yeah, I've always loved how much I care. I've always loved being a part of other people's journeys. And I just was at a position that I just needed to, not stop caring, but just take a minute to look within. And I think it's similar to what I'd mentioned previously, is that nothing was going wrong in the journey. That's what I had to figure out, because I was battling for such a long time. I thought, well, obviously, if I just have enough sleep on this weekend, then I should have it. Like I was just mentally, which is exhausting. I'm mentally calculating everything that's going on rather than just absolutely stopping the control. I just was trying to control everything. So as soon as I'm like, as soon as I let go a little bit, my body, I noticed my body exhale. I noticed everything around me just sort of feel like I was getting into more of a flow. And I was working with myself. So an example of that is normally if I'm working on a project or a piece of work and I've got a sharp deadline, I like just pushing through, right, without any breaks. I know that sounds so ridiculous saying that now. It was almost a badge of honor that I had that I needed to complete it. Whereas now I need to make sure that we need our creative juices, right? We need that time of space, because the time of space allows new ideas to come through. So if you're operating from a place that you're like, must get this finished, you're a robot and it just doesn't give you great work. So I guess it was just figuring out how I can work with myself and being proud of all of that progress that I was making. And it was just that sense of pride that I'm still the same person. But when you are a high achiever and you are constantly pushing, there comes a point that the way that you're operating won't work if you're working in that way anymore. So I learned that very harshly and steeply because I'm very stubborn and I was fighting with myself. But yeah, got to a point that I thought, all right, fine, fine,
I give up.
Fine, whatever.
Do you know what's interesting? The show's called The Balance Theory. It's a theory on how we find balance in life. And one of my pain points when I started this was I felt like the conversation, at least 6 years ago anyway, was very masculine energy driven, to the point where it's like, if you want something, you got to hustle, you got to go after it until you get it. And I had this moment of realization where I was like, you know what? I feel like if I can feed myself as a person and I can energize myself, it might take me a little bit longer, but the way I'm showing up is going to be 100% on a more sustainable long-term basis. Now, that doesn't mean make your goals smaller. It doesn't mean stretch out the timeline and take your time. It means be intentional about the way you're showing up. And I didn't align with that hustle, kill yourself until you make it type energy. And what you've just kind of shared, it reminds me of the way we work in modern day, especially as women. It's very masculine. Whatever we're doing, that high achieving energy, it's masculine energy. It doesn't mean it's reserved for men, because I think we naturally have a combination of both energies, but that creative side is feminine, and that requires space, like what you just said. And it's something I'm going through now, where I don't have a lot of mental space, and I almost feel like I have to cling on to every idea I have because I don't know when the next one's going to come, you know. So when you've gone through this period, right, what has been the biggest change you've been forced to, or I guess have now chosen to make in the way you work that's really different to the way you were operating before?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's funny, I'll touch on the hustle culture for a second, because whenever I hear hustle culture, I always thought of it as a positive, which it's obviously not a positive for most people. But the hustle, I always identified as hustle because for me, hustle was always the passion in the belly, the fire in the belly that you had for whatever you were doing, and you're hustling and you're grinding, and you have to work hard in this life. But I think the difference is, you're right, it is the balance, because you can get to where you want with all of that passion. You just have to figure out in what way it works best and serves you. To answer your question, actually, it's interesting because I was doing a lot of thinking in this. And when we think about high achievers, we are always looking for the big vision, success, and success normally ties into also financial success, right? And I've been doing a lot of work around this because I think that it also directly ties into the relationship that you have with money. And a lot of the relationships that you have with money actually stems from your childhood. And there's usually 2 questions that you can ask yourself to identify what that looks like. So, for example, the first question is, when I was younger, money to me was, so available, tight, absent. And then the second question is, my parents' relationship with money was. Now, the answer to the first question for me was, when I was younger, money was available because my parents shielded me from any financial distress that they were in. We always got the presents that we wanted on our birthdays and Christmas, so I always felt like it was available. But the answer to my parents was, my parents' relationship to money was, and my dad was always working around the clock, grinding. When I would ask Mum, oh, where's Dad? She's like, oh, he's providing for the family, he's traveling, he's stressed. So I thought to myself, without knowing, that I'll always have money in my life as long as I absolutely work hard and grind myself to the bone. And that absolutely translated into my life to a T. I burnt myself out from just pushing. So it was figuring out, how do I change the relationship that I have with this, because it will change the way that I operate. And the minute that I started to let go, because it was really interesting, I've always known that I will have money in my life. I mean, I started from zero and I've built wealth since then, lost it when I was younger, built it like the normal, and then figured out a way of continuing to build it, but then burnt out along the way. So it was really just understanding, how can I what do I need to do in order to figure out that money will come anyway? So once I stopped, I realized that money was still flowing. So I think that that's really powerful.
You've given me a bit of food for thought there, actually. And if we reflect on, right, you said that Energizer Bunny was the identity you always clung onto. It's not so far removed from that ideal, right? That ideal that you had, that you were striving for. What do you think? Obviously, that character, or that version of you, right, has brought you so much success and has been such a positive driver in your life. But when you reflect now, what do you think it didn't let you have space for?
That's a good question. I think it's just being able to celebrate the wins. I think it's also having a life outside of the journey to achievement. There are other things that are important. And I've always prided myself on being able to enjoy the journey, because I do love every single step. But when you're starting to become wired or lose your energy, it's just a sign to it's not a permanent stop. It's just slow yourself down just for a minute, because even when you're slowing down, you may actually catapult your success much quicker because you're moving with the flow. Your ideas will come to you much quicker, and you're in a sense of, it's okay, like this is going to come, no worries.
And how many times have you started something with a vision and then it changes along the way? Like you actually need to give yourself moments to catch up with yourself, to be like, okay, I've now grown to this point. I thought I was going there, but this no longer feels right. I need to pivot and sort of shift at this moment. It's kind of looking at it like yellow and red lights, right? Doesn't mean you're not going to cross the road. It's just a temporary pause, but it is hard to do. And especially when we both come from corporate backgrounds, it's this very competitive energy. If you slow down, and social media doesn't help either. Now, whether you're in corporate or not, it's that energy of somebody has something you don't. You really have to check in with yourself. And I find always thinking about, like, I mean, the exercise you shared is brilliant. I'm going to do a bit of homework on that. But even thinking about your relationship with social media and how it makes you feel in today's world is really important, to make sure you're actually sticking in your own lane.
That's actually really funny because I've been off social media. I mean, I've had my team's been looking after my business account, and obviously I've been across it, but I've removed myself. Well, I did. I'm back on since, whatever. But I removed myself from social media and from LinkedIn just during a period because I thought I just need to step back because I need to only focus on myself. Now, the benefit, when I've seen other people's success, I've always been really happy because it means I know I can have success. I'm very fortunate not to have ever been, I don't feel competitive to people, but I am way too harsh on myself. But one thing I was jealous about is the main reason I removed myself from social media is because, I think the last straw for me was when I saw someone saying, "Hi, join me. I'm going for a quick run before you start the day." And I thought, I'm so jealous that they can get up and go for a run and have all of this beautiful energy. And I thought, just need to step back because where I am right now is just, I'm in a season of slowdown. So it doesn't matter. Not that I run anyway, so.
Yeah. And the other thing I really want to address here, because I think oftentimes when people talk about having balance in life, it feels like this very reserved, take a step back and just like take a passive approach to your life. I genuinely have the view that finding balance in life means working out what your priorities are right now with where you want to go.
Yes.
Sometimes that means health takes the front seat. Sometimes that means your relationship needs to take the front seat. Sometimes it means work needs to take the front seat. But you need to constantly check in with yourself and say, okay, what are my priorities right now? And the reason I wanted to say that is because we're both ambitious people. And I don't think it's one or the other, right? I don't think it's a case of have ambition or have balance. I think the question to yourself is, what is your ambition asking of you? What kind of lifestyle is it asking? And how do you organize your priorities in a way where you can fuel yourself to meet those requirements? Right.
Definitely.
And sometimes it means you have to make sacrifices. Like, I really don't have a social life right now, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on things because I'm clear on what I'm working towards. But it is a constant check-in, right? And you're going to have to move those pieces around as life sort of presents you with different handbrakes or different U-turns, whatever the case may be. Sort of moving forward now, how are you looking at your energy? Like, if you used to see yourself as an Energizer bunny, how do you see yourself now? Do you have parts of that? Do you still identify with that with some caveats? Do you find a new way to like move with that identity? Like, where have you landed? Are you still landing? Talk to me
I am
about
circling. No, I would still say I'm an Energizer bunny only because I think it's less about now the output and it's more about how I feel inside. I still have the passion, and when I went through everything, I still had this passion, and I agree with what you're saying in terms of it's focusing on what is the bigger vision and whether you need to slow down in points or focus on different aspects of your life. That's incredibly important. I was always looking at my biggest vision and thought, this is still there. Nothing's going to change that. I absolutely still would like to keep the Energizer Bunny. I'll put it on my LinkedIn bio because I think that it still speaks to me, and it's more about the passion that I have inside.
Yeah, it's your energy. It doesn't mean that's you 24/7. That's just your energy. You're a passionate, you're a genuine, you're a...
Oh, thank you.
No, you even message me when I have milestones, that I post and share online. Like, you're genuinely a caring, energized person, and that doesn't mean you can't have one day off and sleep, but it's realizing that you need to show up for yourself sometimes too, and you don't always need the full energy version of you. You sometimes need other things.
That's the thing. It's actually funny because I was saying to my partner one time when we were about to go out somewhere, and I'm like, I just am worried because I'm not the same I don't have that energy, and I'm just worried about my personality. He's like, people are around you not because of that. Just, you're okay. Like, we love you. It's okay. And it just had this realization, because I thought, I just want to make, like, am I performing? I mean, I'm not performing. This is who I mean, you've known me for a long time. I'm not performing, but it's also this sense of, you don't always have to be at 100%. People don't need to see you at 100% all the time. But I thought that was really interesting.
Well, you know what's funny? We have this internal dialogue with ourselves,
Yes.
right? Like, and when I reflect on my own life, it's this idea of like, am I doing enough every day? It's my inner critic. It's the way it talks to me. It's the way I feel. The reality is no one sees you 100% of the time. So everything we're talking about now, people from the outside will probably have no idea anything's going on.
Yeah.
Right? But it's how you're moving through your life and showing up for yourself, and how can you give yourself permission to be a certain way but not have to be that way all the time, and lean into other parts of yourself that are slower. But what I'm trying to say is, even if you do that, no one's going to know the difference. They're still going to see you as the Energizer Bunny at the events, like giving 100%. But if you give yourself permission to not be that way on a weekend or whatever, no one's going to know.
Absolutely.
You know?
And the thing is, no one really cares. And I know that. I think I've always grappled with the fact that I don't like not feeling myself. So even because it doesn't really bother me. I've never been one to care what people think genuinely, but I don't like letting people down, and I don't like not feeling like myself, if that makes sense.
But that's a you versus you thing.
Yeah, it is. It's always been a me versus me thing. And I'm so hard on myself.
I'm the same.
Like, just way too hard. But then I think I balance it out, because I'm like, you've got this. I do I'm like, good balance. But it's just not in balance sometimes.
What do you think is the biggest thing that no longer has your time or energy that did before, that is really letting you move through life in a different way now?
I'd say probably control and pressure. I contradicted myself a lot, because I have always known genuinely that I'm going to get there. You know, I've got this big vision. I've got success in my blood. Step by step, I'm always going to get there. But my behavior didn't demonstrate that, because I was so closely grappling every move that I would make, and within an inch of itself. If I know I'm going to get there, just go with the flow, baby. It's trust. I need to trust that if my body is asking for rest, a step back, a walk around the park, it's not going to slow my progress. And I would like to live more in alignment, so that I'm not contradicting myself anymore.
I think that's actually a really good moment of pause, just for everybody listening, to think about what are they working towards and what are the inconsistencies in everyday life, because what that reveals are limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Right. I think consciously you can be moving. My therapist explained it to me this way. If you're in a rowboat, right, you're consciously moving towards top 10 podcast, biggest female founder network, right? You have your big vision, you're rowing towards it. But if underneath there's a current, it's going the other way.
Yeah.
Where you go, you're not moving that much further towards where you want to go. You're going with the currents taking you, and the current represents your subconscious, which is where your limiting beliefs lie. So if you have those limiting beliefs, or I guess it's like core beliefs, right? You've shared one personally where you have to work and be working around the clock and like enslave yourself to work, to make money, to be successful. That's where the current's taking you. It's not taking you to maybe this abundant, really like money just comes and goes. Whatever the conflict is, you have to really go within and look under. My therapist calls it like go scuba diving and work out what is it underneath. For me, I'll share, it was this feeling of not being good enough. I'd come home, I was always an A student, but I'd have 9 out of 10 on a test, and mum would say, amazing, great work. What was the 1 point you lost so you can do better next time, right? Completely lovingly,
yeah, of course.
Always proud of me, but I would always be looking for the deficit, and it's something I've carried through to my adult life. So yeah, I've got this big vision and I know I'm going to get there consciously, but deep down I'm always looking for the deficit. So is the version of me that's going to have that big vision be looking for deficits, or are they just going to accept that there are deficits in life and you're never going to be perfect? And, so it's always interesting to consider your vision versus your daily behaviors, and that gap, or if you feel like something's off there, it can often illuminate what's under the water, if you will. I really wanted to spend a chunk of time talking about this, because you often don't know what to do with that ambition when life forces you to slow down, and it's a very confusing place to be. But I just think having these types of conversations and these reminders where you really zoom out and you remember there's actually no deadline for what you're working on in your life. You've put this imaginary like, well, if I don't do these tasks this week, everything's going to fall over. There's no deadline to you figuring out life. It's actually the whole point.
Yeah, it is the whole point.
I feel like that helps you exhale a little bit too.
I couldn't agree more.
So if you could go back and give yourself any piece of advice to that first moment where you're like, oh my God, I cannot move at the pace I want to move at. I've just seen someone running. I can't even imagine that right now. Like, what would you actually say to yourself?
I'd say, Nicki, this is all a part of the plan. This is not going to slow you down in any way. You're going to have more self-love. You're going to understand yourself better in the way that you operate. And my girl, it is going to get only so much better from here. Sometimes the hardest periods that you go through are genuinely the catalyst to the next stage and the next stage and the stage after that. So I am very grateful, even though if only you could see me at points. There wasn't a lot of gratitude at points, but I'm very grateful for it now, extremely grateful for it now.
I mean, hindsight is a beautiful thing, but you always, I find like tapping into that and trust of like, this is serving a purpose.
Yes.
Even if I don't see the purpose now, sometimes you just got to go through it. You know?
And that's the thing as well. Every single period in your life, you always make it through, and there's always something better that has come out of it.
Yeah.
So I did tell myself after I'd moved past the woe is me, I was like, I know that you're going to get through and it's going to be better. So why don't you go through the next stage knowing that you've already got there? Because you wouldn't be stressed, because you would know that everything is aligning. So
I call that borrowing from your future self.
Yes.
And I do it with, goal setting as well. It's a little trick I use. I think about myself in the future and I borrow energy and thoughts from her, knowing that's the direction I'm going in.
I mean, she's a great girl.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, before to now, how would you say you're looking at success differently?
I look at success exactly the same, genuinely. It's just the way that I operate that's changing.
So is that like the metrics you're using underneath it?
I think it's because success, I think success for me is the goals that I have and the vision that I have and building things. I think it's also success for me is building big things but living with integrity, living in line with my values. That's always been extremely important to me, especially in industries that are competitive, especially in a time that things are competitive, just always seeing the best in everything. But that hasn't changed. I think the vision hasn't changed. My big ambitions haven't changed. But what has changed is the fact that I can have both the vision and also a body that is happy with me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you can, like I said, I'm a big believer you can hold space for both big ambitions and presence with yourself, and one is not mutually exclusive to the other, despite what hustle culture will tell us. It's really, I think the more aligned you are, that speed accelerates what you want to do. I think it's actually the opposite of what we assume, I want to shift tone a little bit now and kind of dive into the work you actually do with a lot of founders. And I'm a big believer that mindset is such a key role in achieving anything. I mean, what we've spoken about today is such a fraction of what goes into the personal development, working out your fears or your triggers or your blocks, like all those things are so important. You say there are a lot of common challenges that show up at every single stage of business. So I'm really curious to know what is most predictable and why does it show up?
Oh, it's such a broad question. And I think the first thing that I'll say is when you are an entrepreneur, having an uncertain life is a part of the journey. There are usually 10 storms a day. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, I think you need to know going into it that life is not going to be linear in any capacity. What I find the biggest mindset sometimes with founders at the very early stages, it's centered around perfectionism, worried about starting when they're not ready, worried about what people will think, being visible on social media.
I think a lot of people nodding their heads right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard, right? And the fear of being judged, the fear of, is my friend Sally from primary school going to see me doing this? But none of that matters. And once you move past that first hurdle and you start creating the content, you realize actually I'm doing this for a bigger vision. Then when you start generating more revenue, you either, well, I think the biggest thing when you start generating revenue, or even before you start generating revenue, the biggest mindset, especially women, need to make is treating your business like a business and not a passion project. So many of us start because they're like, oh, I love this so much and I've got such a wonderful skill set and, you know, I'm intelligent and I have a different perspective. But it's a side hustle and they're sort of going with the flow for fear of going all in. Whereas you need to mentally go all in your business and start treating it like a commercial entity. So start to really understand your numbers, price for profit, because genuinely once you start treating your business like a business, it starts behaving like one, and then you can start taking real ownership there. Another one, I think, as you start to generate more revenue, it's things like leadership. A lot of people, when they start businesses, they've come in because they've got this incredible passion for what they're doing, and the business grows, but then it gets to a point that you need to hire, and that is a job on its own, being able to treat people the right way for starters, but also understanding how to bring out people's strengths, understanding how to rally people around the biggest vision, because the biggest challenge that I see with entrepreneurs is they don't want to let go. They're just, this is their baby and they're the ones that know how to do what they're doing. My recommendation is hold off hiring someone until you can hire someone that is smarter than you in the areas that you have no experience. Because typically when you're starting a business, you've got this skill set in this one area, but you have to look after so many different aspects and different areas of your business. So hiring the right people is incredibly important. And then naturally, as you scale, getting really good at sales, and then everything that comes along with the little challenges that you'll face every single day.
I already know that it's true that like personal development as you grow in business and what you're doing, even if it's your career, like plays such a key role in allowing you to elevate at those different moments. Have you observed anything specifically or common or like you notice as a pattern that happens to people right before they make it, right before there's a big wave of success? You often see anything that's correlated?
Have you heard the saying, a winner is a loser who just tried one more time? I think that the difference with success is, or the people that just find real success, is they're not focused on just the success. They're focused on how do they put one foot in front of the other? How do they make sure what they're doing is operating the right way? How do they say yes to opportunities that are in alignment to the bigger vision? The tighter that you focus on just the end outcome, I think it inhibits you from making the right decisions. The minute that you have to be looking at your vision, but it's necessary that you're taking the right steps and building blocks in order to get there. So when you're starting to live in alignment in every single aspect, I think you're one step closer to generating that real success, because it's typically something that you do from habit to habit, and one night or one day you'll wake up and you'll realize, oh my gosh, I'm here. Like and then you'll be on to the next thing. But it'll be something that only because you've done the right things time after time after time again. So have your vision, but also focus on the steps required in order to get there.
And back to kind of the quote you shared, have you seen that visual of a guy's chipping away in a mine?
Yes,
on top?
for the gold.
Yeah, and or diamonds or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and he stops right before the diamonds versus the guy who keeps going all the way.
Yeah.
You know, I always keep that front of mind when we're human. We have days where we're like, oh, why am I doing this? Or, you have the big vision. We're like, why is it taking so long? Again, we're all in our own timeline, but that visual like really helps me just be like, no, but the next one could be the diamond.
Absolutely. I also like to say as well that if you have a big vision and you have a big knowing in your belly and you're doing the right things, then you can almost take it as it's done. The vision is done. Your success is already guaranteed. So just focus on what are the small baby steps that you need to do in order to get there, and it's almost guaranteed. Things are always going to come into your space that are challenges or learnings, but you'll realize that when you keep on doing just the little things step by step, the big thing will always come. It's guaranteed.
And don't you think oftentimes those big things are like, they often manifest themselves in such different and better ways than what you could have expected? Like,
yes,
you really can't imagine the way things turn out for you, because you don't know what people come into your life or opportunities present. Like I've felt that myself. Like when I really reflect on, okay, what have been the biggest moments on the podcast? I couldn't have, I've got the big vision, but these milestones, I suppose, along the way, I didn't even know YouTube gave out plaques, like when I started, it wasn't even on my vision board. So you actually don't know what is possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you reconcile, or like when you're even like working with founders and stuff, like how do you actually coach on the element of, we spoke about it before, of feeling like you're on a timeline and like you got to keep working, otherwise things are going to slow down. Like how do you correlate that ambition and that high energy when you want something so bad with like this fictional timeline we've put in our head?
It is a fictional timeline. And I just keep on going back to the building blocks, because you're right. Sometimes with your big vision, it will generally turn out much bigger and better than you ever thought. But it really is about getting really strategic and identifying, well, what are the things that I need to be doing right now? It's macro is the big vision. Let's go micro. What are some of the things that are in alignment with that big vision that I need to do right now? And sometimes they're really, really small. Get in contact with these people who are influential that might help me with this opportunity. And trying only to keep hyper-focused on that. Say yes to the things that are in alignment to the bigger goal, and you'll just step by step, because you're right, there is no timeline. It's just not true. There are times that you need to obviously do things within a certain time frame, but again, have the vision and then work backwards to the goal. What are the small digestible chunks?
Yeah, I've really had to have a sit down with myself this week as I'm navigating this phase of I've slowed down to be a mum. Like, should I downsize my dreams and stuff? It's like there's actually no deadline on what I'm working on. It's a part of me. It's an extension of me. If it's not the podcast, it's going to be some version that aligns with the same vibe. Like it's something I'm working on and iterating. There is no deadline. Despite you looking at someone else who's done it in 1 year or 3 years or by 30, they're on Forbes on 30, under 30, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you really are in your own lane, and
Absolutely.
you've got to remind yourself that constantly.
And you don't know what's going on in someone else's life.
Idea.
And you don't know what's in store for you either. Something could be right around the corner, but everyone is on their own timeline. There is absolutely no rush. And if someone else is doing something incredible, then that means it's available to you as well.
Yeah, that's a beautiful reframe. I find whenever I've had that feeling of jealousy or envy, like really reframing it. No, actually this person's showing me what's possible.
Totally.
There's not a limited amount of this type of opportunity, One thing I really want to talk to you about, because I'd say you're like as close to an expert as you can get on, is sales, having come from that world. This is something I've always struggled with, because I've felt like, how can I be so pushy and in someone's face? That's always felt so uncomfortable for me. And I've never known how to like inherently or naturally like put myself out there in a way that doesn't feel that way. So what am I misunderstanding about the concept of sales that makes me feel like it's so unnatural?
Oh my gosh, I do. I love sales. And I think sales creates almost all business opportunities. It is the one skill almost everyone needs in their life.
I'm sat.
Yeah,
Let's
good. Okay, well, let's go through this. So I think the first thing that you said is you don't want to appear pushy, and that is so common, especially when it comes to women as well. But the reason that you would probably say that is you would have experienced very pushy salespeople in your life, probably from time to time. But the reality is, if you start thinking about sales as you are creating new opportunities in your life, it's actually less about you and more about the other person. So there are usually 3 things that you need to be a good salesperson, other than the obvious, which is being a genuine person, because I think that that's first and foremost. But 1 is the ability to communicate effectively. 2 is having this vision, fire, excitement, energy in your belly about what you're talking about. And then 3 is just knowing, like being an expert in your field, knowing your stuff. Whenever I think about sales, when I first started my career, I probably was a little bit more pushy. I mean, I was a phone salesperson trying to get people to exhibit at a conference. And when my sales managers at the time would give me all of these tactics and to close people quickly, right? But as I spent more time in my career and I started to really develop these skills, I realized that the more you try to sell, the less you will sell. The more you try to understand people and build trust with people, the more you will win. And I think that the easiest way to describe that is, if you are trying to sell something to someone, you need to first of all understand them and what they're looking for in their life more than you need to sell them the product. So when I started Founders Official, for example, the community didn't come first. I secured Google as a launch partner before I even had one person in the community. And that was because I had built this relationship with Google because I'm curious about everything, and you always are trying to uncover opportunities. Now, Google doesn't need me, right? But the ability to be able to sell your vision and get people excited about your vision is half of the challenge, is getting people on board. And the only way to do that is by talking about something in the future, like talking about how big it could get, talking about how incredible it would be. And so when I had built a relationship with Google because I was doing some consulting work for them. And then, we were building relationship, and then I had said what my vision was, and this is so incredible, aligned it with the work that they were also doing in the women's space, and then made it almost as if it was a no-brainer for them. So to bring it back, I think the biggest thing is, if I came on strong and said, you need to be, first of all, Google doesn't need anything. It's about being able to position it in the right way so that they can see the value and they can see the benefit to them.
So how do we translate this to somebody listening? Maybe they're just trying to pitch themselves, right?
Yes.
As let's just start as simple as that. Do you have any taking those principles? Somebody wants to work with someone, they want them to partner with them, they want them to sponsor them, whatever it is. What are some actual tangible tactics on how they can approach that conversation?
So if they're introducing themselves, or?
Yeah, sparking an initial conversation to explore an opportunity.
So I think, I'm trying to think of a couple of actual examples, and some of them are when going onto LinkedIn, for example, and trying to get meetings with, tier one clients that will then turn into business. Otherwise doing it face to face. But I know LinkedIn is it's a great opportunity to build high level connections. And the one challenge that I'm seeing right now, because I get approached all the time by people who are trying to sell something, and the whole entire script is AI.
Oh, you can spot it from a mile away. It sounds like the last 6 messages I've gotten.
And the thing is, I understand, but if you can personalize it in some way and make it more human as a starting point, then you're already 50% ahead of everyone else. But then the second part is get to the point really, really quickly. And if you can, it's all about the vision. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs, when they're starting out, they will say, yeah, but I haven't built anything yet. Or I don't even, what are you doing in the future? So for example, for me, when I was pitching for sponsorship, even from Amazon, I would say who I am. Hi, I'm Nicki, the founder and CEO of Founders Official. We're building the most powerful ecosystem for females, backed by Google. Would love to chat with you. About how, I think I said something based on what Amazon was doing at the time, because you want to try and make it just so personal.
Aligned, yeah.
And aligned, not would love to align and collaborate. Don't ever use those words. Try and use words that are a part of everyday speak.
Yeah.
Conversational, human. Make a spelling mistake. It's okay. They'll know then that you are you. I reached out to a hotel chain and I had said, my colleague did yoga at your facility, said it was the best she'd ever done. I'm not a yoga person myself, but she loved it. Anyway, actually, I wanted to speak to you about blah. You have to sense the person, but making it more personalized, they're immediately seeing, oh, she's a human. Oh, what is she about? And then you're able to build out the relationship from there. When you're in person and you're trying to sell yourself, I think the best thing that you can do is lead with the genuine person that you are. First of all, give it a minute. If you're meeting someone at a networking event and you say, oh, hi, I'm actually looking for blah, 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 people will know that it's a bit too full on. Try and build a little bit of a rapport with someone first. Ease into it.
Yeah, I think those are really good tips. And back to like the online approach, I don't know if this is like me being woo-woo, but I obviously get like we get so many emails of people wanting to be guests on the show, and I genuinely feel I can get the vibe from an email. Like
That's your female intuition.
You know, like when you talk about, make it personalized, like when I pitch for a guest or when I ask for something, a lot of people, how did you get that person on? Like I always manually write every single email that goes out. It's not something I've delegated. Like even if my team sends it out, I write the script because there's a reason I want somebody on the show. And I do feel like that translates when people are receiving messages, and you got to think a lot of people get a lot of LinkedIn DMs or emails all the time. Like how are you going to stand out? I just feel like on that initial approach, like, yes, AI is amazing for so many things and it has streamlined my work in ways I couldn't have imagined. But when it comes to that, when it comes to human connection, even if it's through an email, like I do think there's a point there to reflect and not just make that one more task that AI does,
Absolutely. I think it's about, letting your personality shine through. Also, I think that if someone sent you a message and said specifically what they think that they could help with based on the knowledge that they know of your podcast, I think you'd probably be 70% more in. Yeah, rather than, hello, I'm looking for opportunities to, whereas, I've recently gone through burnout and I've seen that this is a great topic that could be presented on your podcast, X, Y, and Z. It could be
definitely. Personalization is, I think, the way to stand out. Actually, if we just close on a question to you about AI, because it's a space I'm spending a lot of time thinking about in terms of where is our future going, what does it mean for my work, for the community, for experiences. What role do you think it has to play in the space you operate in, and what parts of where you operate do you think it's a no-go?
So, it helps streamline so many parts of the business. It's crazy. From organising your folders to even helping with prep. So when I do preparation for a lot of things, I'll have my initial thoughts, then I'll go in. Sometimes I use it as a brainstorming tool. There are ways of just speeding up a process. The one area that you need to be really mindful of is the reason that you are successful or the reason that you are you is because of you. And ChatGPT, AI, will always draw on the median of everything or the averages that everyone tends to use. We want to make sure that you're using things from your own experience, your own thoughts. And I think it's really important that we are still human at the end of the day. I don't think that AI is ever going to take over because there is just such an aspect of the human mentality that's still required. So I would say that is an area I'm trying to think, because the one thing we see is across social media and everywhere, everyone's got the same captions, everyone's got a lot of the same text. And I understand why. It helps you push content out at a faster rate. But do you notice the people that don't, and they're using it and they're writing their own, or it sounds like their own personality? I think that's just so much more important, being able to sound like you, genuinely giving your own experience.
I was my husband showed me a clip, I think it was from Gary Vee, and he was talking about where he thinks the future's going, and I think it's interesting. I think it aligns with the way I see things. He's talking about a future that looks something like a barbell. On one end, you have the extreme AI, pro, AI does everything, that versus like an analog reality where people are really reverting back to human experiences in real life. And I feel like I want to take what I'm doing in that analog kind of world, because I do think in a world where it is so much easier and accessible to, they call it AI slop now, what's online, because you can just spot it from a mile away. I think what stands out and what resonates is what's going to make people feel human at the end of the day. It's always really interesting to notice how you feel after consuming content as well. People always, I always share this story. A client of mine who's in the tech space said to me, you can create now like an AI avatar of yourself this is when I was doing solo podcasts, to do your own podcasts. And initially I was like, oh my God, imagine how much time that would save me. And then I was like, hold on a minute. That like defeats the whole purpose of me doing it. I'm a thinker. I want to be a thought leader. Like I want to present an idea. So like, it can make things easier, but at what cost? And if the cost is yourself and your humanness, I think it's just one thing to really
I agree.
think about as we're so easily integrating it into our processes,
Yeah.
Nicki, it's been such a pleasure having you on today and connecting over so much richness in your life. I know it's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs, but it really is the richness of what's made your life and what made you to here today and what's made you start Founders Official, which I've been able to experience some of the events and the community. And I think whatever you do is infused with so much authenticity and, you having a break to figure things out and just take 2 steps back. I saw this thing yesterday and it was like, when you realize that taking a step back is a part of the dance and that is life, that's such a beautiful thing. I'm really excited to see where this period of your life has, the role it's played and where it's going to take you. I'm so grateful we connected and I'm so happy to have had you on the show
Thank you so much. It's been so nice to be here and I'm so glad I think now was the time that we were meant to reconnect.
Yeah.
So thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Me too. Thank you.